What's going on, everyone? So a little bit of a continuation from previous video. I mentioned yesterday that Mother Talzin is going to be revealed today, and well, we've got Mother Talzin today. We got to talk about the Nightsisters. They look absolutely sweet and are shaping up to be a pretty strong faction. I actually see some major value from them going forward. I will be back to some more normal, longer form videos. For those of you that haven't watched the channel for the last couple of weeks, I've mentioned that I've been pretty sick. My voice hasn't quite been there, so I haven't been able to record those like hour and a half long videos that I normally do. But we're finally there. We're finally back. Okay. I still got a little bit of cough, but we're finally back to be able to record those bigger videos. A big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you for supporting the channel. I think we're going to be hosting a little bit of a tournament here coming up soon, which is kind of cool for the patron, just kind of in-house, potentially webcam based. We will see. But thank you for supporting the channel. And let's dive into our first card for today in Old Daka. This looks absolutely sweet, by the way. And as I've mentioned, the Nightsisters are really shaping up to be a very powerful faction. And, well, this also works with another card that we want to talk about in just a moment. First off, Old Daka, 5-cost ground unit in Vigilance Villainy. It's a 6/6. 5-cost 6/6 is definitely above rate. That is really powerful. The 5-cost 6/6, we're thinking about like Zuckuss, Poe Dameron's, Anakin Skywalker. This is definitely a stat line where you might consider playing this just because of the stat line. I don't think it's quite there in terms of 5 resources is a lot to pay for just a bunch of stats, but it is a really nice stat line. We've got when played, you may defeat a friendly knight unit not named Old Daka. Then you may play that unit from your discard pile for free. So the idea here is hopefully getting value out of either a when played ability or a when defeated ability, or best of both worlds, both, right? Again, you are playing that unit. Okay, so if you are defeating any sort of Nightsister unit that has a when played effect, you are going to get to trigger that again. This is really quite strong, especially with all the other Nightsister units that we've seen, right? We see the Talzin's Assassin, for example, is a perfect example of this, where we turn 3, play Talzin's Assassin, get that -3/-3 trigger. She maybe takes a little bit of damage. You play Old Daka, you get to kind of refresh that, well, HP bar, or get an attack in, play Old Daka, defeat Talzin's Assassin, have her come back, give another -3/-3, hopefully finish off a unit or shrink down another unit or kill a unit or whatever it is. Those types of effects are pretty strong. There are also some characters or some units that have a when defeated trigger, so we can get that value out of them as well. If we see some more knight units, I think this Old Daka could be exceptionally powerful. Honestly, already looks like something that I am very interested in. But I think this is also one of those factions where we're going to see a lot more going forward. This already looks good with things like Talzin's Assassin, Karis, those types of cards that we have already gone over. Next up, we've got Nightister Warrior, another card that has a when defeated trigger that you could use Old Daka with, but this is a 2-cost ground unit in Vigilance. It's a 2/2. When defeated, you draw a card. This one, a lot less exciting to me. I'm much more excited about the cards that stand alone and are reasonable. This one's a 2-cost 2/2. This is already horrible. Like 2-cost 2/2, horrible stat line. Don't want to see that on a ground unit. Not even viable for the space arena for the most part, but on the ground arena, it is real bad. You do get to draw a card when it's defeated. Yes, it works with something like Thrawn. And I wanted to talk about this alongside like Old Daka. So Old Daka, you get to refresh some of the knight abilities. And obviously you need a knight card or a Nightsister card to trigger all those abilities. But if you happen to have Thrawn, you may be able to double trigger a when defeated ability that a Nightsister has, which is kind of the cool combination. So something like Nightister Warrior, could you be playing this in Thrawn? Yeah, you could play this in Thrawn, draw 2 cards. Is that good enough? Probably not. Normally, drawing a bunch of extra cards isn't going to be all that much conducive to winning more games. It's really going to be getting some of those more powerful effects, things like healing a bunch to stay in the game until longer, or getting a bunch of experience tokens, or dealing, -2/-3 when you're defeated. So this one seems on the weaker side. It is a force unit for 2 resources, which is something to consider, but I don't know if it's actually good enough to be played. But it's a common, so probably not that much writing on it. Next up, we've got Soressu Stance. This one's kind of interesting. It kind of reminds me of like a Lando or a Luke or a Kanan, you go to pay 1 for this event, you play a force unit from your hand, and you give a shield token to it. So essentially, you are getting sort of like a Kanan or Luke ability, where you're getting a shield token immediately, but you only can do it for force units, and it does cost 1 to get that shield token. The nice thing about it is that you can immediately protect your force unit. I don't necessarily know if this is going to be all that fantastic. I could definitely see this being played maybe as like a 1 of or 2 of in some decks that really want to be able to protect their force units. If we're in a situation where that is necessary, maybe Soressu Stance can be viable. The only problem with shield tokens is that it doesn't actually protect you up against any removal effects, which is usually where your force units are going to be dying. However, this does work up against, ambushers, direct damage and things like that. Not indirect damage, direct damage on your force units. So that could be viable for something pretty interesting. It does do well. Like, shield tokens on units for 1 cost is solid. That's why something like a Luke or a Kanan or those types of effects have been pretty impactful. This is just really baked into a couple of different leaders, and we know how strong this can be. And more so, this is even stronger because you don't need to use up an action, and it's immediately applied as that unit goes into play. So that is all very nice, but it is an individual card that you're spending in order to get this shield token, which is not necessarily something that a lot of people will be willing to sacrifice in order to get that shield token. So not really there on Soressu Stance. Again, I could see it potentially as like a 1 of or 2 of in those decks that are really looking to protect their force units. But then we're going to talk about the big honcho here today. Okay, Mother Talzin. I actually think Mother Talzin looks really, really interesting. So Mother Talzin, Vigilance Villainy leader, pretty much expected based on all the Nightsister cards that we were getting. We have an action to exhaust, use the force, give a unit -1/-1 for this phase. You get Force Knight as the tags. You can deploy for 5 as a 3/7. So pretty reasonable stats, actually. 4/6, 3/7. Both these are pretty acceptable stats. 4/6 is going to be a little bit more aggressive. 3/7 is a little bit more value oriented. And I think that fits with Mother Talzin's strategy. The Nightsisters are what they're trying to do. On attack, you may give a unit -1/-1 for this phase. So let's first talk about the front ability. I see a lot of people thinking like, okay, this ability is pretty weak. And honestly, they would be, for the most part, right. The using the force to give -1/-1 seems like a very, very large cost for a minimal payoff. But the thing that I'm kind of curious about is, are we going to see more Nightsister cards fall into this category? And the reason I ask is, or the reason why I say that is because we've already gotten a couple cards that really work with this, right? We see cards like Mother Talzin's Assassin or Karis, where we're able to use the force and give -1, or -2/-2, -3, -3, and then you could stack another -1/-1 and potentially finish off a unit, which could potentially be pretty strong. We also have Marin, who can go ahead and discard a card to deal some damage to some units, and then this can go ahead and finish them off. Some things like that, which could be potentially pretty interesting, right? But the downside is that all of those cards are, for the most part, Talzin's Assassin and Karis, they need to use the force too. So how easy is it to produce force tokens? It looks like in a Nightsister deck that it would be on the easier side to do so, right? Turn 1, you play a force unit, you get to attack, get the force, maybe you get to use the force, and then attack with another force unit to get the force again later on, right? That's something that's very, very viable. Remember, it's when a friendly force unit attacks, you get to create your force token. That's just like the base description in terms of a few different bases. So you could potentially have multiple force units, right? Like, again, as I said, turn 1, you play a force unit, you attack on turn 2, you get to have the force on turn 3, you get to use the force, attack with a unit, get the force, use the force again, attack with a unit, get the force. See what I'm saying? Like, you kind of chain these together. Is that going to be very difficult? I would imagine that's not going to be extremely likely. Yes, you can probably have 1 unit on the board at any given time. That's pretty likely to get an attack in reasonably every turn or so. I don't think that's too out of the ordinary, but getting multiple attacks in, That's going to be a little bit tricky. You're going to need to be able to control the board very well. And the biggest thing with Mother Talzin is that you actually don't have a whole lot of Nightsister units. Now, this one doesn't actually specifically work with Nightsisters, right? You don't need to have Nightsisters for Mother Talzin to work. She actually has nothing to do with Nightsister, actually. She's just using the Force. On her flip side, her attacking as a essentially 4-powered unit is actually quite strong. And I do think the -1/-1 on attack is something to be a little bit worried about. It's interesting because you might not think that this is very strong, but then you look at like Quinlan, right? Who 5 to deploy, 3/7, has the Force attack, all things that are important for Quinlan. And then guess what Quinlan's doing? 1 extra damage, right? Not Talzin is kind of doing that, but giving you a little bit of a different dynamic. Quinlan immediately gets the impact when you play a unit. That's incredibly strong. And already that's something that I'm more leaning towards, right? Because I'd rather have that immediate impact. Having to attack is a downside in most situations, but Mother Talzin has the upside of actually reducing the power, and so the actual effectiveness of that unit during that turn can actually be weaker, which allows maybe other units to trade up. So that is the advantage. This is pretty interesting. I think Mother Talzin has some potential here, and it really depends again on how likely it is to use the Force. So far, we've seen Force units and then the bases that are able to generate Force when you attack with a Force unit. If that's the only way, I'm not super convinced by Mother Talzin, right? If there are cards that do something impactful and generate the Force for you, more of them, because there are a couple that get you the Force or use up the Force or whatever. If there are more of those, I can see Mother Talzin being a lot better, right? That's what I'm kind of curious about. Are we going to have to rely on these units to be played every turn to get the Force? I don't know. And if that's the case, though, I don't think she's all that strong. Of course, with Marin, with the Mother Talzin, you do have Aggression Vigilance, which is Force Throw territory, right? Force Throw plus a little bit of extra damage or -1/-1 can synergize very, very well. So you do have that going for Mother Talzin, but I don't think that's necessarily something specific that we should be rating Talzin on, because aggression is a very common aspect, and really any deck can be in the situation to utilize Force Throw. So very, very interesting. I am hopeful for Mother Talzin. Realistically, though, we do not have that many Nightsister units, right? We've got Old Daka, Talzin's Assassin, Karis as new ones, as well as the Nightsister we just talked about. I think, what was the name? Let's pop back over here. Nightister Warrior that we just spoke about. All of those are new Nightsister units. We have the Daughter of Dathomir. We have, oh my gosh, there was another Nightsister unit, right? I want to say there was another Nightsister unit, but I can't remember the name. I'm trying to pull it up on the side. Nope, that's pretty much it in terms of vigilance. We have Marin, if I haven't mentioned that already. Savage Oppress was the other one that I was thinking of. So very few Nightsister units, and a lot of them later on in the curve, which does not bode well for Old Daka or Mother Talzin and what they want. So it's really reliant on the rest of the set. I'm hopeful because I think the Nightsisters are a really cool tribe, and I do think that overall strategy of utilizing the undeath, death, using the Force, getting these triggers, doing all this stuff is really, really cool, but we'll have to see. And the same thing goes with Thrawn. If Thrawn expects to try to utilize some of these when defeated triggers with like Old Daka, you're going to need a lot more Nightsisters. You just are. Yeah, otherwise, it's not worth putting in your deck. Well, let me know what you think about Soressu Stance, Mother Talzin, the Old Daka, and the Nightister Warrior. Kind of a little bit of a brief spoilers. And as I said, back to your regularly scheduled content with the occasional spoiler updates here after we get some more cards released. And of course, if there's anything extremely exciting like another Darth Revan. But come on, guys. Darth Revan's already released and all the KOTOR cards have already been released. We're not going to get anything near as cool as that for the rest of the set. Sorry, I'm biased. It is what it is. I'm still exceptionally excited for the Nightsisters. Really, really cool part of the Clone Wars era and in general, just the Clone Wars series. So we'll see. But let me know what you think about these cards in the comment section down below. Let me know if you're interested in the Nightsisters. It's not something that's super common, but I know it's something that I'm excited about. But I know there's some diehard Nightsister fans. I know there are out there. Let me know, and I'll see you all for the next one.